It's better than Roland Emmerich's. Duh. Gareth Edwards' Godzilla is almost good. Almost. It comes very close in being good, but it's a few amateurish mistakes away from being good. First of all, I have to commend the promotion of this film, how it went down. The trailers led us to believe it would be basically a classic reprisal of 1954 Gojira, when we had Gojira basically put against humanity, and Gojira being representing the fear of nuclear power, of nuclear weaponry. And he was going basically to have to deal with Heisenberg, Bryan Cranston basically, whom looks more like Malcolm's dad in this film. But instead it turns out to be a structurally classic Godzilla film, in which Godzilla has to fight against other monsters that threatens humanity and the balance of nature. And there's barely any Bryan Cranston in this film, because he dies early on, off screen. Way to go. It turns out that the lead of this film is Bryan Cranston's son in the film. The same actor used to play Kick-Ass, and he's a completely bland military white guy who has to come back to his family while the world is going mad. This film has many problems. First of all, let's start talking about the build-up to the actual appearance of Gojira and a couple of Madhog, I believe they're called, this very generic-looking insectoid monsters that basically have to reproduce themselves to spread chaos and disaster to the world, and Gojira basically has to come back from the depth of the ocean and stop them, and yes, that sounds about right for any classic Gojira film. I'd want nothing more but to see Gojira fighting against these monsters. And to be honest, the build-up to the first appearance of Gojira himself was a moment for the ages. It was one of the most powerful and memorable cinematic moments of the year. There's a tsunami in the Hawaii, and then fireworks explode, and then we see the form of Gojira that emerges. Not in its entirety, though. Then he arrives in front of the other monster, and then the camera slowly goes up until we see Godzilla's angry face, and he roars to the audience, and it was glorious! And then the film cuts away to another scene. Gareth Edwards doesn't know a thing about suspense, and yet he tries to have the majority of the film be suspenseful and building up the moments in which the monsters actually fight, except the moment in which the monsters actually fight each other seems to never arrive. And every time they're about to clash, there is a sudden cop-out and we cut to another scene altogether. Maybe a scene about Mr. Generic White Guy having to struggle to come back to his equally bland family. Because that's what I want to see in a movie about Gojira fighting other monsters. The completely uninteresting, boring story of a completely uninteresting, boring main character that nobody cares about. It makes you wish they actually kept Bryan Cranston alive, because at least he was a really captivating character in the role of this former scientist who lost his wife during the not 2011 tsunami at the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film was set in 1999, but, you know, the tsunami and the power reactor getting flooded, that is so obviously a reference to the 2011 tsunami. It almost made me think that Gojira, or at least the monsters that Gojira's fighting, are going to be symbolizing exactly that, the tsunami. But it turns out that since the story seems to go the way it goes, with a completely silly and nonsensical plot, and lots of hilarious exposition dumps, and people turning towards the camera dramatically with this expression right here, saying something like, "There are still buses on that bridge. Stop this arrogance. You don't understand Gojira. I do, because I'm a Japanese scientist." By the way, props to Ken Watanabe for being outstanding in the classic role of the scientist Japanese guy who knows everything and preaches about the arrogance of man. That is perfect in a Gojira film. That's what I want to see in a kaiju Japanese monster film, let alone one with the Hollywood budget and with stupendous special effects and a high-class cinematography. And the cinematography, make no mistake, is really good. Gareth Edwards may have many defects, but the film looked very, very good. Especially in all the little ways that the monsters are introduced into the scene with the, again, very suspenseful, very built-up moments in which they show up. But you cannot make a movie entirely comprised of suspense. At some point you have to have a payoff for all the suspense. Otherwise, you're just wasting precious screen time. And it's especially offensive if you're wasting precious screen time by telling the story of the white military guy that nobody really cares about. Seriously, it's distracting you from actually seeing Gojira fighting the other monsters. Now, when we actually get to those moments of pure, unbridled battle in the dusk-filled ruins of a metropolis, in this post-apocalyptic scenario, and this really end-of-the-world feel to it, it's really, really outstanding. But they are a bit too little and too late to make up for all the wasted time and wasted potential. That said, when Gojira actually unleashes for the first time and also for the last time, 2 times, he does that 2 times basically, 1, 2, but it's memorable. When he unleashes his fire-breathing laser to the other monsters, whoa! I can assure you the entire theater was going down in excitement. Or maybe it was just me. I was jumping on the edge of my seat. It almost made up for all the coping out on the other fights earlier on. But still, it's kind of sad when, you know, there were great expectations about this film, especially after what Pacific Rim had to offer. But the truth of the matter is, Gareth Edwards is still kind of an amateur director. He seemed to be, the way his film was shot, seems to say about him that he was too busy being awestruck at the awesomeness that is Gojira, from the little human's points of view, to actually remember to showing us Gojira doing the awesome things he does, which are the things that make Gojira awesome in the first place. And yes, it's a missed opportunity for the most part. And it's really maddening, especially after the first time they were about to show a fight, but then they cut out to the white military guy's child watching pieces of the fight on a TV network that recorded the whole thing. Why does he get to see it and we not? Gareth Edwards is not Guillermo del Toro. He probably doesn't know how to properly stage epic battles between giant monsters. He's only good at trying to make us believe they were so cool because of the reactions of the little humans. But well, Gojira is the hero in this story. Let's face it. The trailers were building up the idea that Gojira was going to go against humanity. But in truth, it turns out that Gojira is the hero of humanity. Well, not exactly the hero of humanity, but more like the embodiment of nature. He comes around whenever there is an imbalance to fight the other monsters, who are effectively the embodiment of the nuclear fear. Which makes this Gojira film very vintage in that regard, very classic in the formula of the giant monster movie. And really, all the other little things about this film, excluding generic bland ex-Kick-Ass guy, and several cop-outs, those other elements work. Like I said, Ken Watanabe having this connection with Gojira because he knows he's the good guy and he's going to stop the monsters. And then there's the American military guys who say, no, we have to detonate this bomb to kill everyone because we have citizens to protect. And everyone is so finally super serious, super intense about everything that's going on. You cannot help but crack a smile. Even the exposition dump that they deliver at some point, how could they do that with keeping a straight face? I burst into laughter most of the times. That really that fits. That is great. That is the kind of cheesiness and corniness you'd like to see in a Godzilla movie. And then there is those moments of real pure cinematic brilliancy. The task force with the parachutes basically throwing themselves out of the helicopter towards the end to enter in the dust-filled, sun-covering, apocalyptic scenario of the metropolis that hosted the fight between Gojira and the other monsters. While strangely enough, the soundtrack from 2001: A Space Odyssey played in the background, that gives it such a moment, such a special moment in cinematic history. It's really, really good to behold, really memorable. Like I said, the cinematography and the actual appearance of Gojira are basically what win me over for the most part about this film. But still, everything else is so not good that in the end this film is more of a mixed bag, and I have more complaints than I have praises. With that said, the ending was perfect! And it opens many doors to possible sequels that maybe can be better than this one, if you let them be directed by Guillermo del Toro. Pacific Rim versus Gojira. I want to see that. I want that crossover. Make it happen! So yes, Pacific Rim was much better kaiju movie, which is sad considering that Godzilla is the king of the kaiju, so... But, you know, since they've been both made by Warner Bros. And Legendary Pictures, and if Toho actually agrees, maybe, just maybe, a crossover between the two of them wouldn't be that impossible, especially in this age we live in which everything can become a larger crossover universe, thanks to the Avengers. So yes, make it happen. I think everyone would love to see that. Oh, and for the love of everything that's sacred, don't make it direct by Gareth Edwards. Please don't. Well, that was my opinion about the Gojira movie. I don't think I'm saying anything new or particularly profound about it. It's basically the same complaints I'm sure everyone is going to have about it. But, you know my opinion at least. So, well, what else is there to say but